Chicago, Chicago, that toddling town. My hometown of birth is in the news in regards to rideshare for all the right reasons. What up, folks? Once again, it is indeed your boy Tim with another ride-sharing video. Following in the footsteps of Minneapolis drivers, Chicago is making news. Check this out.
Rideshare drivers taken to the streets, rallying in front of City Hall over concerns about wages and passenger fares.
They say Uber and Lyft are raising passenger fares, but not how much drivers earn. Tia is back with more on this story.
Well, Terrence and Sylvia, Chicago Gig Alliance drivers speaking out today on this very issue, joined by several aldermen as well. They are citing a 2021 study from the University of Illinois to make their point. That research found that drivers make an average of $13 an hour in the Chicago area. It also shows a 36% increase in passenger fare pricing from 2019 to 2023. And in Chicago specifically, a 54% increase during that same time period. Workers say they are putting in more hours and making less.
They need to be paid fairly, and they need a process that gives them justice, and they need some protection while they're out here on the road to make sure that they can get home safely.
So this is what the drivers want. They are calling for the passage of the Chicago Rideshare Living Wage and Safety Ordinance, which would raise driver pay. We did reach out to Uber and Lyft about today's event and did hear back from Lyft on this issue. Here's the statement. They say, quote, the bill being discussed would drastically increase the cost of rides and make the platform less safe. Drivers would ultimately earn less because so few people would be left to afford a ride. This is the very same dynamic playing out right now in Minneapolis. Lyft says the city's own study showed that no rideshare drivers earn less than $20 an hour and that the majority of them earn between $31 and $40 an hour. Sylvia?
Thank you, Tia.
Very nice. Now, they're doing things the right way in Chicago, in my humble opinion. You hear them mention gig alliance drivers. So it sounds like they have some type of a pseudo unity, union going on. We need more unity in rideshare. That's the whole purpose of the companies, is to keep us divided, less transparency. No unity is what the companies benefit with. So this gig alliance, speaking on behalf of drivers, that's certainly what is needed. Also, you notice they are protesting in front of City Hall. So what we talked about many times on the channel, strikes, passionate while they may be, in my humble opinion, you need to be speaking to politicians. If anything's going to happen, it needs to be done legislatively. So getting politicians on your side to pass these ordinances and laws is what needs to be done. So shout out to them for not hanging out in front of an airport or some major, hub where rideshare drivers are getting in cars, but hanging out in front of City Hall to let the politicians know we are watching you. Any driver speaking on behalf of fair, safety, transparency, that's where you should be. Talking to politicians, not necessarily the passengers. So let's go into some of the statements mentioned. Now, they point out that a 2021 study came to the conclusion that drivers in Chicago are making around $13 per hour. I suppose if you're flipping burgers, a minimum wage of $13 an hour in Chicago is not the worst thing to have. But not if you need a whole damn car to maintain and you're only earning $13 an hour. So yeah, they're damn sure getting underpaid in Chicago if this study is correct. But listen to what it continues on and says in regards to this 2021 study, that between 2019 and 2023, driver fares, the fares the passengers are paying, increased by 36%, and not a damn thing was passed on to drivers. In other words, if you're taking an Uber or Lyft, you're paying 36% more between 2019 and 2023. And we all know as drivers, we damn sure have not received a 36% increase. But what's worse is that in Chicago, the same study concluded the fares increased by 54%. There is absolutely no excuse they can come up with for why fares increased 54% and the drivers didn't make shit other than corporate greed. There's no other way to describe that. The overhead for Uber and Lyft is just nowhere near enough to justify that. So this is what we're talking about in regards to lack of transparency. The more drivers know, the more passengers know, the more obvious it becomes what Uber and Lyft are doing. We had another video where we talked earlier about Governor Glenn Youngkin, a Republican down in Virginia, vetoing a bill that would have made it law in that state to tell everybody what's going on. Fact is, only Uber and Lyft have all the metrics to know what all of the pay, all of the money has been divided. Drivers and passengers don't know shit. Uber knows how much they're getting, how much the passenger is paying, and how much the driver is receiving. Uber and Lyft knows all of that. The drivers don't know what the passengers are paying, and the passengers don't know what the drivers are getting. So there is a lot of blind trust from drivers and passengers to Uber and Lyft. And we know Uber and Lyft has abused and exploited that trust from day one. I don't need to go into all of the claims of drivers are making $90,000 a year, or how if you get paid less, you're going to make more. I mean, they've told a host of lies. I've covered them in numerous videos. Nevertheless, one of the issues also that I like that this driver asked for, I don't know how the hell it would be implemented, but it certainly needs to be brought up. He stated, we need more protection while out on the road. If you watch my channel, you know I've covered a host of drivers losing their lives in Chicago, passengers being murdered while they're in the car. Chicago is a violent place to engage in rideshare. So this driver is alluding to that, but I don't know what protections Uber or Lyft could do. I do believe they should provide all drivers with cameras. I think that would help out a little bit. That might discourage some folks if they knew they were being videoed, and it shouldn't be on the driver to purchase that. Uber and Lyft could easily supply some type of, basic dash cam that goes to the cloud, and it is completely viewable to people getting in your car. That would really help that out. I do believe that, but maybe I'm wrong. Feel free to state that in the comments. Last but not least, you hear Lyft bringing up what happened in Minneapolis. Now, here's what Lyft is saying. According to their numbers, drivers are making $20 an hour in Chicago. I'm fairly certain that's flat out wrong. Every time you leave it up to Uber or Lyft to figure out what drivers are earning, they always are way up there. I mean, you had a video in Minneapolis where a driver was suggesting that he makes as much as $100 per hour ushering passengers in Minneapolis, and on a bad day, he might make $50 an hour. This is the bullshit that they float around. But Lyft is claiming their studies suggest that drivers are making it on average $20 an hour, and some drivers are making between $31 and $40 per hour. Hogwash, in my opinion. There may be a few successful drivers in Chicago making a decent wage, but I'll tell you this. If drivers were averaging between $31 and $40 an hour, you wouldn't see these types of complaints. People who are making a good wage don't bitch and complain. They're bitching and complaining because they're probably making that $13 an hour that the original study concluded. But it's up to Uber and Lyft to defend their cause by lying to folks. If they wanted to truly show how much drivers were making and show that the drivers are lying and just being greedy, they would be transparent on how the fares are split up. The fact that they're hiding all of this shit from everybody shows that they are the ones that can't be trusted. The drivers are out there totally willing to show you what their take is and what they're hearing from the passengers in regards to how much they're paying. It's Uber and Lyft that don't want to expose the numbers. So just wanted to point this out because I do appreciate Chicago, my hometown, fighting on behalf of drivers. Last but not least, before I conclude the video, you notice in the Lyft statement, they suggest that if this ordinance passes, it'll make the platform less safe. How the fuck does that work? How does giving drivers a raise and doing something about their safety make driving and ride sharing less safe? I would sure as hell like to hear them explain what about this ordinance would make the platform less safe. Paying drivers more somehow makes them less safe. And last but not least, they need to explain why fares went up 54% and drivers didn't get shit. Notice that was not in their statement. Nevertheless, folks, shout out to Chicago. I do appreciate that. You guys tuning in, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see what next city follows in these footsteps. Catch you later.